Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Business Forum of iPUMSE 2021. The forum is organized with the core purpose of creating a platform for all participants to explore the concept of value co-creation in the context of business crisis, particularly focusing on how to craft and execute strategies to build organizational resilience towards sustainable growth. First of all, to introduce the panelists and the moderator of today's session, I would like to invite Ms. Kanjikanimoto, Lecturer, Department of Business Finance. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Anra. Let me give a brief account of each panelist and the moderator of today's business forum in terms of their expertise, experience, and research focus. We have invited renowned experts representing both academia and industry who will share their insights and perspectives to shed light on the phenomenon of value co-creation in business crises. To begin with, let me introduce Professor Kanjikanimoto. Professor Kanjikanimoto is a professor of business and society at Faculty of Commerce, Waseda University, Japan. He also founded a new academy in Japan called Japan Forum of Business and Society in 2011. His research interest lies in the intersection and interconnectivity of business and society, corporate social responsibility, and social innovation. Among the notable papers, the theoretical paper on Do Multi-Stakeholder Initiatives Make for Better CSR, published in Corporate Governance Journal, and the Emergent Process of Social Innovation, Multi-Stakeholders Perspective, published in International Journal of Innovation and Regional Development are both illuminative and insightful. Next, I would like to introduce to the gathering Dr. Chamindika Veerappan. Dr. Chamindika Veerappan is a lecturer in the Faculty of Business and Law at the Swinburne University of Technology, Australia. She completed both the bachelor's and master's degrees at the University of Peradeniya before completing her doctoral degree at RMIT, Australia. Her research interest lies in the areas of social entrepreneurship and social innovation. Among the notable papers, the recent papers of a decade of research published in the Journal of Social Entrepreneurship, a review and a research agenda in the Journal of Social Entrepreneurship, and knowledge creation theory of entrepreneurial orientation in social enterprises in Journal of Small Business Management are noteworthy. Next noteworthy person who is present today in the business forum is Mr. W.H.K. Vagapitiya. Mr. W.H.K. Vagapitiya is the founder chairman of Loves Holding Limited, the parent company of Loves Gas PLC. Loves Holdings Limited is a highly diversified company having footprint in areas like petroleum, LPG distribution, property development, shipping, automobile services, and consumer retailing. As an accomplished businessman, his industry experience spans over 4 decades, out of which 26 years have been as chairman of Loves Holdings Limited. Moreover, he earned his bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of Sri Jawadhanapura and a master's degree from the Postgraduate Institute of Management. Currently, he is reading for a doctoral degree at PIM. Then, I take great pleasure in introducing Ms. Vindhya Kure. Ms. Vindhya Kure is the Chief Bancassurance Officer at Union Assurance PLC, a subsidiary of John Keells Holding PLC. Further, she is the Assistant Vice President at John Keells Holding PLC since 2016. John Keells Holdings PLC is Sri Lanka's diversified company managing hotels and resorts in Sri Lanka and the Maldives to providing port, marine fuel and logistics services to IT solutions, manufacturing of food and beverages to running a chain of supermarkets, tea broking to stockbroking, life insurance, and Union Assurance, one of the largest life insurance solution providers in the country. John Keel's Holding plc has been resilient even during the COVID-19 pandemic. She earned her bachelor's degree in Business Administration Honours in Business Economics from the University of Colombo and her master's degree from the University of Colombo. Further, she is a fellow member of CPA Australia and a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants Sri Lanka. The next distinguished guest which I will be introducing is Mr. Darshana Veerapan. Mr. Darshana Veerapan currently serves as a Director of Universal Lifeline Ceylon Private Limited, Sri Lanka. And further, he is a senior contributor to TripAdvisor. So he has gained 24 years of working experience in hospitality, import and export, retails, apparel and audit in the United Arab Emirates, Zanzibar, Tanzania, Maldives, Rwanda and Sri Lanka. He holds a Master of Business Administration from the University of Suffolk, United Kingdom, postgraduate diplomas from London Business School of Commerce and Scottish Qualification Authority, and currently reading for the PhD from University of Suffolk, United Kingdom. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce Mr. N Aguilar to this distinguished gathering. Mr. N Aguilar is a senior lecturer attached to the Department of Human Resource Management, Faculty of Management, University of Peradeniya, Sri Lanka. He earned his bachelor's degree in Business Administration Honours in Human Resource Management from the University of Jaffna. He holds MSc in Service Management from the University of Colombo, MBA from Sheffield Hallam University, United Kingdom, MBS in Industrial Relations and HRM from National University of Ireland. Currently, he is reading for a doctoral degree at Strathclyde Business School, University of Strathclyde, United Kingdom. Now, I would like to hand over the session to Mr. Aguilar, the moderator of today's session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Today's purpose is all about to explore and understand how the concept of value co-creation can be leveraged through crafting and executing strategies for the purpose of building organizational resilience in a crisis moment. We are going to have two rounds, particularly in the first round, we'll be focusing on sharing the individual panelists' perspectives on the concept of value co-creation and their unique perspectives regarding the concept and its utility. And what's really important is when it comes to the first round itself is very broad. In a sense, each panelist has the discretion or the freedom to bring and share their own ideas and perspectives with regard to the concept of value co-creation in a crisis moment. When it comes to the second round, based on the insights gained from the first round, we'll be exploring in depth how the concept of value co-creation could be applied in different contexts and also the possible strategies enterprises could use to gain competitive advantage. Before getting into the first round, I think it's appropriate or relevant to give a kind of snapshot view of the concept of value co-creation from a historical point of view. In early 1990s, two great strategic management thinkers or scholars named C.K. Prahalat and Gary Hamel, they published a book known as The Future of Competition. And in that book, they eloquently argue that the successful enterprises will be the one who that organization primarily rely on capturing opportunity share rather than focusing on market share. In other words, they argue in the future, successful companies should change their mindset from capturing market share to focusing on how to exploit opportunity share. So what is important to remember when it comes to the timing of this book, it was published in what we call pre-internet era. In 2000, one of the co-authors, C.K. Prahalad, along with Venkat Ramaswamy, conceived that the internet era is going to be a different ball game. As a result, they truly believe the firm-centric, firm-dominant, product-centric approach is no longer valid. Instead, they argue value is going to be co-created with the active participation of customers, or in other words, customers should not be perceived as passive recipients, rather they should be perceived as active players or co-creators of product and service. Now, what is really important to remember here, when it comes to value co-creation broadly, stakeholders have a kind of involvement or participation, and it finally leads to a win-win situation for both customers and other stakeholders and also the business enterprise. Now, when it comes to the specific context like we are in, the COVID crisis moment, though it's widely believed the COVID crisis has led to the collapse of, or the temporary collapse of many industries like airlines and also tourism, we also really need to understand there are certain industries have flourished out of this pandemic. For instance, e-commerce is a case in point. So what does it mean? Though the pandemic has created both challenges and opportunities, it is all about how business enterprises respond to such challenges would determine the final outcome. Particularly in the context of our country, Sri Lanka, as a developing economy, the challenges are of different magnitude. What does it mean? Unlike in the developed countries, where the governments provide what we call stimulus packages and other forms of incentives to help businesses, particularly, for example, job guarantee scheme introduced in the UK. In the context of Sri Lankan business enterprises, they have to cope up with these challenges on their own. In other words, with little or no support from external bodies or external parties, business enterprises in Sri Lanka have to reinvent strategies to match with the demands posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. With this note, let me kickstart the first round. So as I have said in the beginning, when it comes to the first round, each panelist would talk about 8 to 10 minutes, their own perspectives, particularly in the concept of value co-creation. From the academic perspective, both academic panelists will talk about theoretical and empirical insights they have gained out of their study, research, and also their teaching experience. And then I will move on to the practitioner's perspective. And then in the second round, we will deal with the topics in depth. So let me invite Professor Kanjikanimoto to share theoretical perspectives and empirical evidences on the significance and application of the concept of value co-creation in a crisis moment. Over to you, sir.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Nagaraja. So I want to share my material. Okay, can you see my material? No?
No, so far. Earlier we...
Here?
Yes, we can see. Thank you.
You can see? Okay, so just wait a second. Here. So at the first round, I have just I must conclude my first presentation within 10 minutes, so I must be very much quick. So as we know, now we are facing a very challenging situation. Just review the background. Since around the 2000, we have a CSR boom, and recently the ESG investment boom around the world, and especially many business people and the researchers are focusing on climate change issues and very lively discussed. And since around 2015, the SDGs very much boom, even in Japan and also the broader situation, the volatility, uncertainty, and the complexity and ambiguity situation, the very complicated situation. And also COVID-19 pandemic that hits our economy and the societies. And the COVID-19 challenges that cause economic and social and environmental very complicated problems. So there are so many challenges for building the resilient and sustainable management, sustainability strategies. And first one is embedding the CSR or sustainability into management process. This is a very core of the CSR definition. And the second one is to develop the engagement with stakeholders, relevant stakeholders, especially in order to recognize the sustainable issues and find out new ideas. And the third one is promote the multi-stakeholder collaborations. For instance, to make a sustainable policy or to set a new code of conduct and some standards. And the fourth one is the developing the responsible leadership with the sustainability mindset. Especially I say that the responsible leadership, the visionary, empowering, and collaborative, and innovative leadership is requested in this world. And the fifth one is creating the social value by social and sustainable innovations. So, I mean, I define this way, the social or sustainable innovation is introduction of a new business model and a market-based mechanism that create a sustainable economic environment and social values. And in this sentence, the business innovations are mainly focused on the new technologies and the production process. In terms of the social and the sustainable innovations, we include the new business scheme, new marketing methodologies, and new social products and services. Those are contributing the 17 goals of sustainable development, with providing the social and economic value. So my question is how and where is social innovation created? And how is the social innovation diffused? Okay, so traditionally, business innovation was created across process. Okay, however, for the last couple of decades, open innovation and creating innovation has been spotlighted, especially since around the 2000. I think the prior researcher, Hung Hippel and the Chesborough and the Prahalad, as you know, all the American management professors, and Hung Hippel explore the user innovation. And the Chesborough, as you know well, they proposed the open innovation, and Prahalad proposed the focus on the process of value creation and to figure out the consumer-producer interactions. So consumers became coming with the value creation involved with the interaction with the firm to co-create and experience sustainably. Okay. In terms of the social innovations, basically open and sustainable innovation with the relevant stakeholders partnership. This is the point. Okay. Open field and open process. Social innovation is created far beyond the boundary of a single organization, but by the collaboration and the co-creation with the relevant or fringe stakeholders. So the most important thing is how to engage with the relevant stakeholder in order to get a support or empathy from stakeholders and the resources and the ideas from these stakeholders. So the point is that business and the relevant stakeholders have co-experience and share along with each other to get the new ideas. So, however, the few researchers focused on the how social innovation is created. They focus on the process of how the social innovation is created and changes, just in contrast with the business innovations. As we know, for the almost half a century, or the last half a century, there's so many researches have compiled. But the social and sustainable innovation is a relatively a new research field. The question, how do social entrepreneurs recognize social problem and create the business scheme with new idea and resources, and how do they diffuse it? Okay, the point is the collaboration with various stakeholders. I just say that this is the multi-stakeholder process. We must focus on and figure out the process and collaborate with multi-stakeholders. So I say the social innovation cluster, yeah, it's similar with the ecosystem of the innovations. So relevant stakeholders, how do they make a good relations, or how do they make a good communication with each other? That is a point. So now I skip these things. How do they interact, the social entrepreneurs and the stakeholders, and how do they create these social innovations? The point is the two processes, the knowledge creation and resource acquisitions. Traditionally, two phenomena has been separately researched, but in the field, we cannot divide two processes closely related. And this is the process of creating and diffusing social innovation. From here, now I don't have any time to describe these figures, but from the left side to the right side, a process of creation and the process of diffusion. Okay, lastly, okay, I just pick up just to point out the management of social innovations. How do they integrate the sustainabilities and the social issues into the business strategies? And they try to make a strategic use of resources. Resources mean the technologies, know-how, and network, and fund to tackle the sustainable issues. And in the process of creating new ideas and innovations, as I mentioned, collaborate with the relevant stakeholders to get the knowledge and the resources. Okay, and the process is just a co-creation of values. And also we need a new measurement, not only the financial performance, but also the non-financial performance. In other words, social impact. Because many researchers in the world try to make a new measurement method, social impact. And the last process is the diffusion of the innovations. Okay, almost 10 minutes. I'm so rushed. Okay, this is my first round presentation. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Let me move on to the other panelist. So I would like to invite Dr. Chamantika to share both theoretical and practical perspectives of value co-creation, drawing on her experience and expertise in entrepreneurship. Over to you, Dr. Chamantika.
Thank you very much, Aglen. I hope you all can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, right. Thank you very much, for having me at this great occasion, and especially thank you very much for your very generous introduction about me. And hi to everyone in the audience and also to my co-panelists. It's great to be a panel member with you all here today. Right. Since Professor Tanimoto has provided a very detailed background to social innovation and how does it link to crisis management, I'm not going to touch on that area very much. So I will first be drawing my insights from the general entrepreneurship perspective. So when it comes to co-creation, as Professor Tanimoto mentioned earlier, so co-creation is actually, or value co-creation. What happens is that we are trying to create value by establishing partnerships with multiple stakeholders in the ecosystem. So that's the basic idea of it. So during a crisis situation, why this is really important and what sort of measures that the organizations would be taking in order to manage the crisis. So I'll be paying my attention to those two key areas with a broader perspective, and then later on in the discussion, I'll be more specific in terms of how we can address these from an SME perspective. So when we look into crisis, we understand that the nature of a crisis, that it is sudden, and we have a very limited response time, and also it is creating threats to the organization. So this is where the co-creation, importance of co-creation comes into play. So why do we really need to engage with the multiple stakeholders? So specifically during a crisis situation. So because of this limited response time, and also the suddenness of it, and also the threat that it creates. So what are the importance of co-creation or value co-creation? So when we invite stakeholders, particularly customers, for example, into the innovation process, what happens is that we get a commitment from these stakeholders to deliver the innovation process. So that is really important during a crisis, rather just getting the insights or ideas to drive the innovation process. So getting the commitment is very important. And that is what is happening when you open your innovation process to the stakeholder involvement. So through partnerships and establishment, what you are doing is that you are inviting them into your innovation process. And on the other hand, it helps us to create the loyalty. For example, if you invite in customers to co-create or co-develop the innovation, and that increases the loyalty as well. So from an entrepreneurship perspective, why this is important? In entrepreneurship, the fundamental that we understand as entrepreneurship is that identifying opportunities and then exploiting them through innovation. So to identify opportunities during a crisis, as we all know that you really need to be closer to the market. So being closer to the market is anyway essential, no matter whether it is a crisis or not. But during a crisis, what happens is that it is very uncertain, sudden. So it's very difficult for us to forecast or predict what is happening. So that is why it is very important for us to invite them into the process. So we together develop the innovation that is really needed to address the customers' needs and wants. And when I say customers, and these customers are not just only the consumers, but also if you just take the B2B markets and B2C markets, so addressing all these different groups. So we can actually fine-tune our response to the crisis. How? If we are developing a product or a service to address the needs of the consumers and the customer, so during the crisis it's very uncertain and we don't know, because the needs and wants are keep on changing in a very fast way, in a rapid way. So to get a better understanding, we really need to work with them so that we can fine-tune our innovation response. Otherwise, we won't be able to develop the proper value proposition to meet the requirements, or a value proposition that really resonates with the customer requirement. So that is why it is important for us to, in a way, to build partnerships and co-create the innovation. On the other hand, during a crisis, especially if you take SMEs, for example, it is very hard for them to agile to these changes, because they have the problem we call liability of smallness, and when they are small, there is limited resources available to them as well. So it is very difficult for them to quickly adjust to the changes in one hand due to the limited resources. So that, because of that, if we can co-create the innovation process with the partners, multiple stakeholders in the ecosystem, so it is possible for us to gather needed resources to drive our innovation process. So these are some of the important elements associated with value co-creation. Now, when we take the entrepreneurship literature related to crisis management, I do understand that there are certain set of strategies that they have been able to identify with regards to the enterprises. So what they are doing in a crisis situation, and what could be the nature of the response and the strategy. So basically, we can understand, and we can identify basically 4 types of strategies that enterprises tend to adopt. So during a crisis situation, organizations tend to perceive their existing strategies or the business activities, and then secondly, they can actually retrench their business operations, and then thirdly, they tend to innovate business operations and the solution, and then finally exit. So let me explain these different responses briefly, and then later on I will connect them to this SMEs in the second round if we get the chance to discuss these elements. Now, when we take the retrenchment, so what happens is during a crisis, companies or the enterprises tend to adopt low-cost measures or cost-cutting strategies. So that is one of the responses that they would adopt and or follow. And secondly, when it comes to the we call persevering strategy, so they tend to maintain the status quo. So how they can maintain the status quo, they can actually tap into the existing, let's say, for example, connections, and also they can bring in debt finance into support. So generally, when in a normal condition, managers really don't like to depend on too much debt financing. But during a crisis moment, they tend to use this as a strategic option. So they can maintain the status quo, or they can use the same set of approaches that they used to follow by further strengthening through debt financing, because finding finance during a crisis would really be difficult as well. So they need some sort of additional resources, so to drive the innovation process. So that is the second strategy that organizations tend to adopt during a crisis. And then thirdly, what they would do is innovation. So that is another type of a strategy that organizations can adopt during a crisis. So what happens in innovation? So that is more long-term oriented strategy. So you tend to adopt, you tend to identify new opportunities, and you tend to identify new markets, and you come up with sometimes radically changing innovations to address the emerging challenges, or sometimes put it in differently, they try to come up with solutions, innovative solutions, or radical or new solutions to address the emerging opportunities in the market. So that is long term. So the first 2 strategies that I mentioned would be short-term oriented and medium-term oriented, respectively. And then there is another option, another strategic option available to enterprises during a crisis is actually we call exit. So this is not actually filing a bankruptcy, but it is actually something focusing on discontinuing unprofitable business activity. So that what they can do is they can actually use those resources to profitable areas and drive them further and uplift them further so that they can get the advantage. So the conference's theme is actually related to something called resilience and sustainability. So these are some of the strategies that organizations could use during a crisis situation. Now, when we try to adopt these 4 different strategies depending on the circumstances, it means depending on your resource availabilities and depending on the institutional conditions in the context that you're operating, it is very important for us to think of the ways of adopting these strategies. So what are the ways? So one of the ways to adopt these strategies is to use co-creative business model approach. So I'll be talking about how we can use co-creative business models in the second round. So however, now when you take these 4 strategies, it looks like, yes, organizations by themselves have to do this. Strategies are their own approaches, their game plan. Yes, they have to do. But unfortunately, we really, most of the time, people do not understand one thing. That is, they tend to think, okay, organization can do this by themselves. No, it's not the case. Especially not only during a crisis situation, but also in the normal situations, the feasible situations. What happens is that we really need to have the support from other players in the business or entrepreneurial ecosystem. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that, okay, you have certain set of strategies or game plans that you can use to address the crisis situations, but you can't do this by your own. So you need the support from other partners in the ecosystem, entrepreneur ecosystem. Who are they? Universities are there, and then the government is there, suppliers are there, and then the complementary resource providers are there, competitors are there, all these different players are there. So we really need to build the connections with them. At the same time, these other parties need to back these innovation processes of the organization. So during a crisis, this is very much important than that of the normal situation. So the point that I'm again trying to make here is that although we understand value co-creation as a business model strategy, you cannot do it just by your own. So you need other supportive players there into action this strategy. So universities are not just only to teach, but also to do research. So we, as Sri Lankans, if we look into the Sri Lankan economy, so we need to think, okay, to what extent our research inform the value co-creation approaches of organizations in Sri Lanka. So to what extent government supports, to what extent other research centers, financing institutions, and other support training institutions, support service providers are connected in this arena. So that is really important. So again, so we have these certain set of strategies to address the crisis situation, but again, we need to build the partnerships, and we need to have the support, or institutional environment should have been built in order to successfully implement the strategies, and then only we really be able to gain the resilience and step towards a sustainable business future. So that is the point that I am making here in a broader way at this first round. And in the second round, we can find more specific details related to this perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chamandika. After listening to both academics' perspectives, now it's time to listen to practitioners' perspectives. So in order to do that, First, I would like to invite Mr. Vagapitiya to share his perspectives on how an entrepreneur can bring out innovative ideas by embracing the concept of value co-creation, particularly in times of crisis. So now it's time to invite him. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to share my thoughts on this, the concept of value co-creation and how organizations build, resilience during these crisis situations. So the previous speakers spoke on the particular concept from an academic and perspective, but let me say a few words from an entrepreneurial perspective, from the real implementers perspective. Now, as you all know, we are in a crisis. If you look at the Sri Lankan crisis, the Sri Lankan enterprises or Sri Lankan entrepreneurs have faced this crisis as twofold. Firstly, the common crisis, which is the unprecedented pandemic, the COVID-19, which has created uncertainty and various other impacts to the socio-economic environments. This was the most recent challenge that the mankind faced in the last century, hopefully, where we were not prepared to understand the basics and how to maneuver our strategies during this kind of crisis situation. Now, the second side of this crisis, the other crisis that the Sri Lankan entrepreneurs have faced is the current economic and political crisis. Now, most of the countries, most of the economies and societies are, sharing their experiences, creating or crafting their strategies, how to overcome this crisis created by this pandemic. Of course, it was a very unprecedented situation where it had the real direct impact to the society and especially to the enterprises like us. That was a global situation, and depending on each country's capabilities and resource maneuverabilities, they have handled it in a different way. Now, when it comes to the Sri Lankan situation, we are in a totally different situation. As we all know, the Sri Lankan economy is going through one of the most worst crises that has faced after post-independence. Now, that is why I mentioned this Sri Lankan, the crisis that the Sri Lankan enterprises have faced are twofold. Now, in the past, we have listened to various theoretical and various kind of innovative concepts by academics and various business leaders, influencers, and many stakeholders in the society, how to create a resilient nation, how to create an innovative economy. But all these things, the result of all these things have to be analyzed based on the outcome. Today, if you look at the Sri Lankan economic situation, we are just talking about just $80 billion economy. Now, for last 60, 70 years, most of these economic theories and then strategies that are being implemented to take our economy to a different level has not been given result to us. Now, so we have to understand these dynamics. Now, when you want me to share my experience and thought in the current crisis situation, and we are in a totally, distress mode. Firstly, the Sri Lankan economic development, GDP growth has almost a minus level. The challenges faced by enterprises, whether it is small, medium, large, micro, you name, everyone are equally exposed to these difficult times. The pandemic is one where it has created a lot of new avenues, new opportunities to come up with very innovative, products and services, and also as the previous speakers stated about value co-creation, how to change their strategies to ensure, delivering of what the customers need. All that are good, and we also, as corporate entities, have leveraged those opportunities. And we were very innovative when this situation arises, changing our course from typical, for example, typical retail model to online deliveries and various information sharing, supporting each others. Those were common things that you could see in most economies, most societies as a result of this pandemic influence. Now, it is a good opportunity, a rare opportunity for entrepreneurs to come up with new entrepreneurial ideas. That I quite agree. But our situation is different. If you happen to talk to 100 Sri Lankan entrepreneurs or to talk to various stakeholders in the society, we are now in a very hopeless stage, a very depressed situation. In one side, the entire financial sector is in a distress mode. Our foreign reserves have depleted to the lowest recorded in the recent past. As a result of that, the biggest challenge that we are facing is to bring raw materials and various other machineries and capital goods to continue our current production and expansions. Now, on the other hand, inflation and ensuring the continuation of securing the employment of our people who build these organizations. And on the other hand, most importantly, delivering what is promised to our end customers. So the not having that macroeconomic policy, national economic policy for the country is also an equal challenge for everyone in our society. So we are operating in this kind of highly volatile, highly unpredictable environment. Surviving in this environment itself is the most resilient, action that we can do. So if you take my case, I started as an entrepreneur with very little capital, 5,000 rupees, and we are a very diversified group with over 20 different businesses, including energy, power, retail, manufacturing, and all that. Very diversified. We were having a very dynamic growth in all sectors. But this situation has created a very unexpected environment, not because of the pandemic situation, but the macroeconomic adverse situation. Now, having said that, we can't just abandon these enterprises. We need to be very agile, very adaptive, and find ways and means to create value to the society and our shareholders, stakeholders. Now, that's the background. If you speak to 100 corporate leaders or entrepreneurs in this world, they are in a very different, thinking mode right now. We don't know what's going to happen next month. We don't know what's going to happen in January, February, March. Handling pandemic, we know that historically, Sri Lanka is a very resilient nation. No matter what kind of environmental challenges we had, the natural factor endowment for this country is more than enough for us to bounce back and move forward. But I don't know. I mean, these are very good theories that you talking. Value creation, but we have not created the best value for our country. This country is ruled by, if you take Sri Lanka as an enterprise, we are a top line is 4.5 trillion, and we have 1.4 million employees, like an enterprise. But we have appointed the most incapable directors to manage it. Now, leaving all these, best economic theories, other global concepts, but the outcome proves that we are in a very, very dire situation as a country. So let me stop there because I don't have very many things to say. Later, I'll say how we survive in this volatile situation, this two-pole crisis, but how we survive. Now, luckily, in our group, most of the products and services are essential services. From LPG to petroleum to lubricant to automobile services to retails to, people have no choice. But we have to find ways and means to deliver these products and services to the consumers in a different mode. So we have a lot of process innovations done during last 2 years post this pandemic. Let me stop here, but later on we might be able to discuss further.
Thank you, Mr. Vagapitiya, for painting the picture of the economy and also the bleak macro instability. Let me invite the next panelist, Mr. Darshana Veerakon, to provide his insights on how an organization can turn crisis moment into opportunity, particularly focusing on how to build an agile organization by drawing the lessons learned during the pandemic.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Can you hear me? Mr. Rajaraja, can you hear
me? Yes, we
Hello?
can hear. There are some problems, but we can hear.
Okay. So, we define co-creation of the collaborative development of a new value, concepts or solution, products and services together with the expert or stakeholders such as customers, suppliers, etc. Co-creation is a form of collaboration, collaborative innovation. Ideas are shared and improved together rather than kept it on oneself. The concept of customer co-creation of value implies that customers can actively participate in every stage of the service development process, offering unique and memorable customer experience of a paramount importance of tourism services provided in order to remain competitive, because I'm going to discuss more in tourism. It is important that you actually create space and time for tourists to spend money in these places, including food business, and visit a local shop or gallery or flea market. If you visit attractions with free admission, let it be cultural centers, museum or churches, including a small donation in the tour price. I will discuss more in detail. So, three clear steps emerging from the discussion for tourism to build better forward. First is improve travelers' confidence. Number two, secondly, undertake the track new market trends and drivers for demand. Third one, coming to build more resilient and inclusive tourism sectors, leveraging renewed interest in sustainability, an important takeaway in the long term. Because if I take the statistics of 2019 in global tourism, 1.5 billion travelers, that's a record. So it's a 4% change. And it says 4 million travelers travel per day. That's what the statistics says. So how the world they have divided in 2019, America is 220 million holds a 15% share. And Europe, 742 million, it's having 51% share. And African continent, it's 71 million holds 5% share. And Middle East, 64 million, 4% share. The most interesting part for us is Asia and Pacific. It's 364 million, comprising of 25% share. So, I mean, Mr. Vagapati also clearly mentioned regarding the practical aspects. So I'm also going to take the practical thing here. Now, in Sri Lankan context in 2019, the contribution to the GDP was 12.6% from tourism. I mean, it's, the number is very impressive because previous year, I mean, it's at 4.28% growth. That's the most important thing we have to consider. But let me give you some other statistics, then you can understand the point what I'm trying to emphasize. It is 2015, year 2015, we had the number of tourist arrival to Sri Lanka is 1,798,390. Let's say 1.8 million. In 2016, it's 2 million. Then 2017, it's 2.1 million. And 2018, 2.3 million. So 2019, 1.9 million. Yes, there's a drop because of the East attack. The point is, I mean, even in the East attack, the decline is only 18%. So that's the thing. So I mean, in the next round, what I will explain, even in a situation like East attack, or now we are in the COVID pandemic and post-pandemic era, or before that we had tsunami, before that we had this civil war in Sri Lanka for 30 years. How we should capitalize the situation. So that's the point where we missed, and the opportunities were missed. Even this number, I mean 1.9 million, it means comparing to 2018 and 19, 2.3 million, 2,333,796 dropped to 1,913,702 guessed by 18% mean. It's a very, it was a time, if you had the correct strategy, how to cater and how to increase the guest using the strategies, we missed that. We missed that opportunity. We call it, I mean, capitalizing the situation capitalizing. So the thing is, I mean, in the next round, I will explain the strategies, how we should capitalize the situation and what are the new trends in the tourism in Sri Lanka. Because with my experience in overseas last 20 years in Maldives, in Zanzibar, because it's also a nice tourist destination in African continent, and in Rwanda. The thing is, now I can divide this topic into four. One is rapidly recover the revenue. That's the number one. Number two is rebuilding operations. That's we can say number two. And number three is rethinking the organization. So, and number four is accelerate digital adoption to enable reimagination. So based on these four sections, I will just go through at a glance because I'm not going to discuss in more details in order to save time for my further discussion in the second round. So rapidly recover revenue means speed matters, startup mindset, and human at the core. Then acceleration of digital technology and analysis, then purpose-driven customer playbook, and ecosystems and adaptability we can mention as the rapid recover revenue, plus identify and prioritize revenue opportunities. We can take like that. Then rebuilding operations, so building operation resilience, and accelerating end-to-end value chain digitization. We can take like that. Then rapidly increase capital and operating expense transparency. Then next one we can take as embracing the future of work. And last one, reimagining a sustainable operation, competitive advantage, and taking action. So third one I mentioned was rethinking the organization. So under that, we can say, we have to evaluate who we are, then how we work. So that's the second thing. And the third thing is place and how to grow. So the fourth one, which I mentioned in the initial one, was accelerate digital adoption to enable reimagination. So under that, we can say refocus digital efforts to reflect changing customer expectations, then use data, Internet of Things to better manage operations. So we can say like this, and accelerate tech modernization and increase the spend and productivity of digital solutions. The thing is, I mean, I can mention like this. So to Daily Financial Times, sometimes back I wrote regarding beyond traditional tourism. Beyond traditional tourism is you can take it as a blue ocean strategy. In strategic management, you know, blue ocean strategy, you can put it into straight away this beyond traditional tourism to blue ocean strategy. Second thing is dark tourism. And the rest of the things I will explain in my second round. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Darshana Meerakon. Now it's time to invite the patiently waiting, the next panelist. So I would like to invite Ms. Vindhya Kure to provide her observation and views regarding the relevance of the concept of value co-creation. She may touch upon the challenges unique to the industry in which she operates, that's insurance, but she might also draw on lessons learned based on her expertise in other areas as well. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Ajilan, for the introduction. So basically, we started off looking at the academic side of value co-creation. We touched upon certain strategies. And then Mr. Vegapitia gave a good context on the socio-economic impact and what Sri Lanka is going through. And Darshana basically brought the whole aspect of tourism into it. So I will basically say in terms of in practicality, what we did at John Hills, and also as a whole, what were the learnings of it. So if you really look at COVID-19 pandemic, yes, businesses were forced to rethink about their value co-creation strategies, right? Because we saw new customer demands emerging. At the same time, customer expectations were increasing. And the ways of fulfilling those customer demands were challenged, and also how the workforce functioning itself have to be relooked at. And also, we should not forget the socio-economic impact the pandemic had on businesses, customers, as well as the employees. From a strategic front, we saw business plans becoming irrelevant overnight, and some organizations completely went bust. But there were those other organizations who were agile enough, who went back to the boardrooms and rethought about the strategies as to how they can still be relevant to the customer, how they can respond to new customer demands, and how they should change the modes of delivering superior customer solutions and also adapt to new ways of working. So that is the result why we saw hotels moving on to food deliveries. We saw supermarkets which had, like, one or two orders a day, the max, by, people overseas just sending, orders for their loved ones at home. Instantly, there were thousands of orders, right? And also from an employee front, work from home, Teams, Zoom, all those became buzzword, and which we never thought will be that extent. So drawing upon my experience at the forefront of the pandemic, right at the beginning, I was actually the financial control of leisure inbound sector. That is where we look at inbound tourism. Then I was in the move, or I was in the transitioning period to become the vice president finance at Cinnamon Hotels. So if I touch upon these two sectors, yes, these two sectors got severely impacted, because we should also not forget, because this was like the third blow for the travel and tourism sector. Why am I saying so? Because the first blow came with the Easter attacks, right? So anyway, the sector was severely impacted, and we saw government coming up with different moratoriums and all that to support the sector. And at the same time, we saw, especially in countries like, UK, where, major tour operators like, Thomas Cook's tour, all that went bust. There was, the whole Brexit impact and everything came into play. And finally, we had this blow. We are having this blow, right? So in terms of immediate concerns were, how do we take care of our customers on board? And most importantly, because if you look at it from an employee front, it's our employees who got severely impacted, because the hotels to places where it was bustling with people just became isolated overnight. And whilst we also talk about the customer front, we should also remember that if we take care of our employees only, these strategies can be executed, right? So taking care of them, giving them that confidence, that assurance that we will take care of the employees, looking at their psychological well-being and all that played a crucial role. But we still went ahead with our reconstruction projects. We still engaged in driving the strategies. So we had few strategies in place. So as I said, plans became irrelevant overnight. But what we did was we worked on different scenarios, right? We had daily discussions. We had cash war rooms on managing our finances. We continue to be engaged with our customers, because it's not only the customers that we are talking about now. If you look at tourism sector, but also the tour operators. So it was important to be engaged and be relevant and understand the evolving needs and wants, and see whether there are any opportunities that we can basically cater to them. So our second speaker, she basically touched upon certain strategies which the companies can take, but I guess for us it was a miss, because yes, we looked at cost cutting, we looked at how productivity can be improved. From the hotels front, yes, debt financing was definitely important, but we also drove innovation. Now, especially when it comes to travel and tourism, the good part of it was, or I believe something which enabled us to become so resilient was, in terms of the digital drive. Because if you look at the inbound travel sector, before 2 years ago, the pandemic itself, we realized that if we wanted to stay ahead of our competition, we have to undergo a digital transformation, because it was coming from our tour operators themselves, right? With the changing, tourism landscape, it was important that our system, our infrastructure supports it. So about 2 years ago, prior to the pandemic itself, we started a project. We looked at, B2B distribution, how we can integrate with our tour operators, right? How we can get on to bigger platforms, right? And how we can improve productivity. Because whilst it is very human centric, we also understood that in terms of cost structures, it is very important that we improve our productivity. So it was just before the pandemic did strike, but we had absolute no problem, because 100% work from home, people had access to the systems, people had access to infrastructure. So in terms of the transition, it was quite easy for us, because the digital transformation had already happened, and it was in our DNA. Then just 6 months ago, I moved to operations as Chief Bank Assurance Officer at Union Assurance. Now, that industry, it's a complete different dynamic, because, as you know, insurance companies are there for risk management, right? You buy an insurance to safeguard you against your loved ones if an unfortunate incident happens. Now, but having said that, this is still a push product, right? And you need the customer engagement, and that is key, right? So with the COVID-19 pandemic happening, yes, customer visits were restricted. People could not go, and even the customers would not like us going and visiting them, right? But in terms of the demand, there was a growing demand. People were more health conscious. People wondered, what if I die, what happens to my family? And there was a huge demand in terms of claims, whether COVID is covered, right? How do I get the same levels of service? So in terms of the expectations, it was very high. And also we need to understand that this is an industry which is highly regulated. So as a country, do we have that regulation, the regulatory framework in place? Also, customers were also finding it difficult because of the socio-economic impact that they were also having. But despite all that, it was important for us as an organization, as a group, that we still go ahead and in terms of achieving targets. So despite the year being very challenging, uh, Union Assurance as a company saw excellent performance in 2020. To become relevant, we undertook a complete, rebranding initiative, right? So we basically repositioned ourselves as a new age, customer-centric, and a digital life insurer. So even there, the whole aspect of going digital, going paperless, and having that process, seamless process, end to end, from customer engagement to that whole customer life cycle, was in place. So I guess because of that proactive thinking, it was quite easy for us to still be resilient despite the challenging situation. And also we need to, especially from an insurance perspective, financial services sectors and likewise, it's important for us to also bear in mind reputation is key, right? So there cannot be any misses, any lapses, and the regulators expect you to still maintain those standards. So in terms of if I just summarize, in terms of being or in terms of reinventing ourselves to remain competitive in a volatile environment, there were two key things. there are two key things which I think is important. One is leadership, because you cannot reinvent even in terms of customer co-creation if there is no proper tone at the top. Because as Mr. Vegapitiya said, yes, because there's a lot of negativities out there, but how do we acknowledge that? But inspire the people, and be authentic about it. So the whole authentic leadership, and also the confidence that you gain as a leader in terms of our customers as well as your employees is of paramount importance. And also what I saw was as a group and in terms of the companies that I touched upon, we were ahead and we were much early in terms of embracing technology and going digital, right? I agree that the pandemic would have definitely accelerated that. But from change management perspective, it was very important to us. It was very easy for us. And then driving innovation was also in our DTA. And another thing which I want to touch upon is in this whole process, agility we touched upon. So it is important that you have the structures, the speed, the flexibility in terms of decision making and executing strategies. Because if you have a very bureaucratic structure, and if you wait for several layers and approvals and go through that whole cycle, the way the consumer demands are changing, right? You will basically, you'll be completely irrelevant by the time you come up with innovation. So I will touch upon these factors in detail, but in a nutshell, I would like to summarize in that way.
Thank you, Ms. Mindya Kure. Having had the first round by setting the stage for the subsequent discussion, now it's time to move on to the next stage. Given the time constraints, and we have to give opportunities for the audience also to raise some of the questions, I kindly request each panelist to keep their responses the minimum of 5 to 6 minutes if possible. In case if you exceed at least 7 to 8 minutes, it will be fine, but it would be great if you could keep within the set limit, then we can have more time for our audience also to raise some questions. So in the second round, first I would like to ask Professor Kanji, since social entrepreneurship as a value creation process focuses on meeting societal needs and stimulate social change, we all know that, what kind of paradigm shift you perceive personally for social enterprises to come up with innovative ideas or solutions during this pandemic or even post-pandemic? Thank you. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for all speakers, and I'm very inspired. And this discussion that reminded me that the HSBA, the report published last year, they said the company which had been positively working with sustainability since the pre-coronas and effectively responded to the COVID-19. And other report said this way: a company making a good relationship with the stakeholders showed their resilience to shareholders, and there's not so decline in share value. And okay, so I think there is a interruption and continuation before and after the COVID pandemic, before and after the pandemic. And there are some global challenges since before the pandemic and actualized more explicitly. For instance, uncertainty of economic policy or geopolitical risks, and continuous sustainability issues like the climate change and poverty and human rights issues. And also post-corona challenges, for example, the social challenges like the medical and healthcare, and education and economic one like the financial assistance and industrial reconstruction. And of course, we must accelerate the digital transformations. And also we need the sustainability transformation in all sectors, not only the business sector, but the university education also. And both of the sustainability issues and the COVID-19 coronavirus issues are requesting the longer time view and the collaboration with relevant stakeholders. So yeah, it's not easy to say what is the paradigm shift is, but as I mentioned in my presentations, one of the keywords is a partnership or a collaboration with stakeholders. And even in Japan, Japanese companies are not so accustomed to engage with stakeholders. And also on the stakeholder side, customers and NGOs. In Japan and the NGO sector, non-profit sector, even now, the immature. So not so accustomed to making a discussion with each other on the same table. So the collaboration with stakeholders is not a new word, and everyone knows, yeah, of course, a partnership is a very important thing. But in actual, in so many cases, including the Japanese companies and business societies, not easy to make a good relationship and a good communication, not just the convey their information to the other side, but the most important thing is to create new ideas, to get the support from the other side and to trust with each other and get new resources and ideas. So I don't want to say that the paradigm shift, but the most important thing is to make the bridge between the business side and the customers and the local people and NGOs people, and also including the university people. Okay, this is my first comment.
Thank you, Professor. Now, I would like to ask Dr. Chamandika. In your earlier discussion, you pointed out the possible strategies available to SMEs. And also you alluded that you would like to discuss more about business model innovation in the context of small and medium enterprises. Could you please explain by contextualizing your views in the context of SMEs, how this business model innovation could shape the value creation process?
Yeah, thanks, Aglan. It's very interesting to see that the practical point of views are emerging and putting some flesh around the theoretical concepts that we've been discussing. So it's good. Now, coming back to the discussion that we ran previously, yes, there are the different strategies that we could follow. So that is the broader perspective that we wanted to bring in. However, now when you take this SMEs, we understand that they lack strategic flexibility because of the lack of preparedness in one hand and all the resource scarcity. So the strategic flexibility is limited. So how we can gain the strategic flexibility? Now, if India's explanation uncovered certain ways of addressing some of these issues and how they have been successful in addressing the crisis issues. So now, established organizations would behave like that. At the same time, now what is happening in small and medium enterprise sector? So before I talk about the approach that we need to take through business model innovation, let me give you a couple of examples from the SME sector. First, I will take an example from the Sri Lankan B2B SME, so which is we call Code 360. One of the successful enterprises that I find as an example to draw your attention, which is a B2B platform, online platform connecting suppliers and the buyers in the international and local market. So they are trying to provide, they try to meet these two different groups at the same, and also they try to help women entrepreneurs to gain more understanding about the product development and the broader entrepreneurship and how to, basically about the venture creation. So during the pandemic, they have found that it is very hard for them to get hold the suppliers or basically the entrepreneurs to the platform, because especially in Sri Lankan situation, the women entrepreneurs and also the male entrepreneurs, so they find that routers have been used by the kids for online learning, and then even the phones have been being used for teaching and learning purposes. So with that, they have found one of the webinars that she was participating, who is that, Ayanti Gurusingh, the CEO and the founder, and she was explaining that the difficulties that they happen to face and how they revamp was actually, so they were tapping on the regional contacts networks to regain the confidence and build the resilience, and to develop the innovation process further. And another example, Dot and Line, which is a Pakistani SME, and they were providing, it's actually a franchise sort of a home-based tutoring venture. And because of the pandemic, so they were unable to run their business as usual, because of the lockdowns and social distancing measures. So you cannot use your houses to work as or organize what you call schools or tutoring classes. So overnight, they were digitalizing their business and they use online tutoring, and they've been successful. And after 1 year, what has happened now is that they've been able to even to expand their business into the international context. So what I'm trying to tell you is that, so even SMEs can be successful. It's not only the established businesses, not just because, now we may sometimes understand, oh, we are small, we can't do it. So it's a fallacy. So this is why I am bringing these two examples to tell at the very outset of this discussion that, no, you can do it. Now, what I observed in their business approach and their strategies, that they have looked at their approach from a business model perspective. So what is a business model, and how we can innovate the business model? So business model is actually, in business modeling, what do we do is that we are trying to configure value proposition, value creation, and value capture in a line with these three. So we try to develop these three in an integrated manner. So very recently, I was doing a research with current Dean of the Agriculture Faculty, Professor Sarath Kodithuakku, regarding business model innovation in Sri Lankan SMEs, right? And what we found was that our majority of the SMEs try to focus on the value capture instead of value creation and value proposition. So the takeaway that I'm trying to give to, or the message that I'm going to give to this SMEs is that, no, you really need to look into the other two components as well. So value capture is how you're gaining the revenue and also balancing it with the cost. But before that, you need to look into the value proposition and how are you going to deliver that in an effective manner. So then when you are integrating these three, only you can really have a resilient and sustainable business model. So that is the key message that I want to give. So when you are trying to identify opportunities during a pandemic and try to exploit it through innovation, so you need to craft the proposition properly and then try to find the ways of delivering it. And that is where then you can bring in the value co-creation, partnerships, and other ecosystem players to the innovation system. To define a proper value proposition, you can bring in customers so that you can understand what their needs and wants are in this keep on changing environment. And then to deliver the mechanisms, what is your approach? What is your partnership arrangement? How are you designing your business activities? How are you going to gather resources? So resource deployment strategy. How are we going to do? That is we call value delivery and value creation approach. So now again, bringing value co-creation into the picture. So that is where you can tap into the research institutions, financial institutions, universities, and other government-based organizations to develop an integrated and a coherent strategy. And then you can think of the next area or the element of the business models, that is we call value capture, right? How are we going to now balance the cost and the revenue? So my suggestion here, the major message that I want to give here is that you really need to develop an integrated approach focusing on all these three areas. Finally, now Mr. Vegapitia was explaining what is happening in the Sri Lankan economy in the broader institutional and macroeconomic environment. Now, what I do find is important here and unique with compared to the developed country context and developing country context is that the business strategy is same. What is different is the way we use it and to what extent we have the systems in place. So if we have a genuine intention and a genuine understanding of how to do this and what we really need to do, then we know how to do it. So in the developed country context, what is the difference mainly is that they have the systems in place. So when there is a crisis, the system is working, and how they are working, the whole ecosystem is acting together. And of course, yes, the crisis can create challenges, but the whole system is working together. For example, if universities can go beyond the teaching front and focus on their research and support the SMEs to inform their strategic delivery of the innovation process, and if the universities can back the government's policy delivery through research, I think that is a simple example that I am bringing here to show that how we can, as an ecosystem, work to support the resilient and sustainable business environment in the economy. So the same approach is extended to other players in the economy. So my two key messages is that if you are an SME, yes, your business strategy or the approach or your game plan should really be focusing on value creation, value proposition, and the value capture in an integrated manner. Whatever the brilliant strategy that you have, it is pointless unless otherwise you have been supported by, or you are supported by the ecosystem or the broader institutional environment of the country and the economy. If that is the case, governments, universities, financial institutions, and rest of the players in the economy have a bigger role to play together. So that is where I understand as proper value co-creation is established. So that is my major message in the second round. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chamandika. Now it's time to move on to the practitioner side in the second round. Let me ask Mr. Vegapitia, as you mentioned in the first round, though LAF's corporation is a diversified corporation engaging in more than 20 lines of businesses, you also have mentioned that most of the businesses fall under the category of essential services or essential product or services. And such a kind of category, essential services, both produce challenges and opportunities as well. But given the Sri Lankan context, you have painted a picture of the instability and the challenges. As a CEO, how do you respond to these unexpected challenges in a pragmatic way?
Well, actually, the biggest challenge we had when we faced this pandemic was to ensure that our businesses sustain, particularly how to ensure the employment of our team. We have over 5,400 employees. The first 10, the foremost, we had to ensure their safety, health, as well as they are getting their income. That was the biggest challenge. So then we looked at how to do the usual thing in a different way. Now, our movements were restricted. Some of our business were very badly affected. For example, leisure sector, we are into leisure, the hotels were closed. But we have to maintain those properties, and we have to ensure the people maintaining those assets as well as the safety and security of the employees. So it's costly thing. On the other hand, most of these investments, like any other business in the country, are invested using borrowed capital. So therefore, we have to maintain the repayment of our debts on time. Fortunately, we got the moratorium up to a certain extent. Unlike in other countries, we never got any grants or anything. It's just a postponing of certain commitments. Now, that was the biggest challenge. How do we ensure the sustainability? How do we survive during this crisis whilst ensuring our investments are in place and employees and the other commitments to the other stakeholders? What we did was we changed our operating models. For example, we use some of our employees for different works. In our retail sector, we could not open our outlets. We started online delivery, which was a very successful thing. When we say online delivery, not the conventional or typical you order, go to a website and order. That's also part of it. But our employees were so committed, they organized markets, for example. Then we are into automobile services. We created mobile workshops, maintaining all the health and safety guidelines. We used to go to houses, and because when you keep your motor vehicles, one without doing anything for a couple of months, you get a lot of technical issues. So these are the innovative ways. I don't want to call them innovations. I mean, we as a nation need more vibrant innovations. Unfortunately, we did things in a different way. If you look at the entire Sri Lankan scenario, we are not an innovation nation. Then we diversified some of our investment into other areas. For example, because of this current situation and also the macro adverse situation, economic situation, we ventured into agriculture. Some of our resources and knowledge, diverse into agriculture side, where the government restricted, importing some of the essential agricultural products, which can be developing within our country, which is a good thing and a unique one. So we had some internal knowledge and resources, and also that helped us to create some agro entrepreneurs. We got hold of some of the farmers in Tanamalville area, and we advised how to grow organic vegetables and things like that. And since we have our own supermarket chain, we could, remove the middle parties, and we had the permission to travel between districts because it's treated as essential services. So we deliver LPG to those places. On their way back, we bring vegetables and other things. So that helped our people to their motivation and the morale to be, we looked after them and supported the rural villagers, farmers. That's one area. On the other hand, most of the other products in our investment portfolio are essential products and services, which are very much not affected due to the pandemic. For example, we are into power generations, solar. So those are not affected. And to like petroleum, lubricant, and LPG. So though LPG is an essential commodity, so we have to deliver. instead of people coming into the market, we had an excellent delivery system where anyone can go on, of course, online and book and we deliver. Then petroleum product, actually, since it's an essential commodity, we kept our service open and all that. Then we are into exports. Our exports volume initially got affected because logistics, international logistics got held up. But during that time, we managed to stock up our certain raw material like rubber. Natural rubber is one of the key raw materials. The prices came down initially. So what we did was, using our employees, we built safe inventories. On the other hand, diversifying investment like agriculture, we invested into pharmaceuticals. We are currently building large pharmaceutical manufacturing plants in Sri Lanka because we see that after pandemic, people are more concerned about pharmaceutical, nutraceutical, and various other things. So it's more challenging, environment, not because of pandemic itself, but because of the adverse economic situation prevailing in our country. Now, the third dimension to the whole situation, even though we always encourage, entrepreneurship, how to foster or create an entrepreneurial nation, unfortunately, as a nation, we don't have that basic environment. Very recently now, entrepreneurship is being taught in universities as a separate stream, but that required environment is not still not conducively available to support and create more and more entrepreneurs. And if probably you may know, according to the last quarterly labor survey in Sri Lanka, only 195,000 entrepreneurs in this country. It's less than 1%. Now, we have almost 500,000 contributory household, but their value creation is not sufficient. Then we have, own account employees. Their contribution is not significant. So to create this $80 billion GDP, we have less than 200,000 enterprises. So what we have been always lobbying with the stakeholders, especially policymakers and politicians, create a very conducive environment where we can breed more and more entrepreneurs who will create more employment opportunities as well as value creation for the nation. So those are the things that we did during these difficult times. But same time, internally, we change our management styles. We change our processes. We change our, operating models in order to survive in these difficult times. So that's what we did.
Thank you, Mr. Bagapitiya. Let me move on to the next panelist. Let me invite Mr. Darshana Virakon. Given the scale of impact of COVID-19 on tourism industry, what kind of transformation you see during the post-COVID pandemic recovery in terms of possible avenues to reposition business enterprises in this industry?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Raj. The thing is, as I first round I explained, this 364 million, it means 25% share of this Asia and Pacific travelers. How we need to increase the number is the point, because now we face two challenges. One is this East attack to Sri Lanka, we can't forget it. And second thing is this COVID pandemic. So both situations we have to take into consideration in order to give a proper and solid answer or solutions to this crisis. Because In 2018 is the year we recorded 2.3 million highest tourist arrival. So, I mean, now let's, in this situation, okay, now the tourist arrival is almost drop, or maybe we need to start increasing the number. So the point is, there are a couple of things we have to do in order to, strategies we have to do in order to increase the numbers. Number one is well-being tourism. Number two, we can say dark tourism. I will explain dark tourism in detail and well-being little bit. So third one, ecotourism, then spiritual tourism and virtual tourism. I think these words like spiritual tourism or virtual tourism, like ecotourism, is very easy to understand, including well-being, because sometimes you have heard wellness tourism. Wellness tourism and well-being also, there's a little difference. So the more broader definition is well-being tourism. The other thing is what we must do. We have to do a proper SWOT analysis. Plus Porter's Pipers, so maybe Pestel, in compare with India and Maldives. Okay, let's in one context, since India is a very big country, 6 times bigger than Sri Lanka, we can just omit it and we can just concentrate the small place in Maldives, which I work around 8 years. How I experience these average daily revenue, what do you call it, ADR, or revenue per occupied room, or revenue per available room, REPA. And third thing is the occupancy ratios and how much end of the day, how much they gain from that segment to individual resort. Then the other thing is, which I went through a couple of other readers, what they have written regarding this post-COVID thing. So they have mentioned promoting domestic tourism is also ideal. Yes, currently, in order to recover, that's a best solution. Introducing them a good attractive packages and things like that. Or now Sri Lanka, we currently say credit card offers. So that's in the very primary level. Second thing is establishing bilateral travel bubbles. So recently we saw in Sri Lanka, government also interfered to this, establishing bilateral travel bubbles to Sri Lanka. That's also a good positive strategy to move forward. Third thing is establishing sub-regional travel bubbles. So, I mean, in that case, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and India, at least, talking about Mauritius and Seychelles, at least these 3 countries, we can get together and have this sub-regional travel bubbles. It's also going to be a good solution. Then couple of other things I can explain. It is special attention to be given to attract high-spend tourists than low-spend tourists. So I'm not going to explain more regarding this, because I mean how to differentiate, because Vindhya is there, she knows the spending ratios and spending pattern of the Sri Lankan tourists, because I don't have really, I mean, in tourism industry, I haven't worked in Sri Lanka, but I have read all these articles and all the figures I have. Practically, I haven't worked so far. Then second thing is project and promote the image of safe Sri Lanka through media coverage, promotional activities, and international marketing. That's the lacking part. Third thing, during this pandemic situation, Sri Lanka tend to attract more towards indigenous medicine treatments and Ayurvedic medicines like turmeric, then perunkayam, ginger, garlic, vetiver, etc. So then foreigners stuck in Sri Lanka use these medicines and were happy with the users. Sri Lanka being a leading country which fights COVID-19, many countries are keen to use its treatment method. By taking this opportunity as an advantage, Sri Lanka can develop such Ayurvedic medical packages and import to foreign countries. I believe in a certain context it has been done, but I don't believe the interference from the relevant sectors is significant and is in an appreciable level. Next one, Sri Lanka must consider ecotourism. Yes, I can see some trends in ecotourism in Sri Lanka. It's a very good trend. then promote Sri Lanka as a transit hub in the region by considering the lessons learned from Dubai and Singapore. The transit mean currently what's happening in Maldives. The guest who stay around 6-7 average stays because that's the average stay in Maldives 6 to 7 days. So they just visit 1 or 2 days in Sri Lanka, then go back to their original destinations. So we have to change that culture. Then the next one, utilize youth in the labor market and reskill programs could be conducted for tour guides and SMEs who are engaged in the industry. Now I will come back to, what I'm going to explain is dark tourism. So dark tourism is called as grift tourism also, because I wrote comprehensive articles to Daily Financial Times. If anyone interested more than this regarding these new strategies, I can give you links to my YouTube videos. I did 5 episodes around 5 hours because it's such lengthy concept. So at a glance, I will just explain what is dark tourism. It's not illegal thing, because people may believe when you see dark or grift tourism, it's something illegal or something not ethical. No, it's not like that. The reason is, the thing is, as I mentioned in my first round, so we had this civil war. The second thing is tsunami. Then recently this East attack. So I told in my first round, we could capitalize those situations. We didn't, because we were not aware how to capitalize this. The thing is, there are a couple of countries, even India and even Japan, this dark tourism they are promoting, because the thing is, it's like some people, they argue it's not ethical to do that, because it's, you talk to these emotional things of a human, donors. So if you what we could simply do, okay, the recent incident, let's take East attack. So a lot of damages happened in Sri Lanka. What we could do simply, we could find the target tourist market and show them, so this kind of disaster happened in Sri Lanka. So if you are donors, if you are willing to donate something, please help us. In Sri Lanka, this Lions Club International, which I am representing, and or Rotary Club International, we are there to serve needy. So then we could actually took the message to these to international organizations to the world and asked them to visit Sri Lanka. And on one hand, then tourists are visiting, and again, it's going to be a direct revenue to the tourism industry. Second thing is, once they visited Sri Lanka, they will see the places and they will see the damages, then they will definitely donate something. So that's how. The same thing, even in the tsunami situation in Sri Lanka. So those things, we could sell it to the tourist. Even soon after this, civil war, that also we could do. And even India, I'm not going to give in more details regarding this. They are also into this dark tourism and make into this emotional things of tourist. High-end tourist or people who have a kind heart to donate something and make something from them. So that's how it need to be. And the very first thing which I mentioned is this well-being tourism. Well-being, as I mentioned, well-being tourism is a little bit different than wellness tourism, because the well-being is a comprehensive package you offer to the guest based on their sicknesses. So once a guest check-in, in the process of reservation time, you send a questionnaire to the guest and ask which kind of illness or sicknesses he is suffering and all these things. So once he arrives to the particular resort or hotel in whatever the country, where the well-being tourism is there, these food habit, food preparation and all the treatments are is person to person. It's a very high costly thing, and you must have the attention to detail of the guest. And finally, in Sri Lanka, because we have a very good Ayurvedic country, like as I mentioned, with this COVID pandemic also, because our immunization systems were strong. So as per the statistics, the death rate and all these things, I mean, the government could easily control because the people are so much healthy people in Sri Lanka. So because of this Ayurveda and food habit, so those things can be sellable. The issue is, or the point is, the bottom line is, whether these authorities or people who are taking the decisions, whether they are capable or knowledgeable. That's the point. So, Mr. Raja, thank you. That's the thing I have to explain. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the last panelist, let me ask Ms. Vindia Kure. How do you envision the future based on what you have observed so far, particularly in the range of industries, the challenges, and the possible interventions you have undertaken? How do you envision a future, particularly for the insurance industry and also the other relevant industries to move forward?
Right. Thanks once again. And due to the interest of time, basically, I will touch upon 2 points briefly. One, as I said, is even if you look at the Asia Pacific region per se, there's a lot of learnings for insurance industry in Sri Lanka, and one key priority would be in terms of digitization. So digitization can be at several fronts. So if I quickly, touch upon the customer-facing aspect of it, how do you digitize customer interaction? So recently, a McKinsey study was published where, in terms of customer interaction, if you look at Asia Pacific region, what used to be about 19% digital interaction, it has now gone to levels of 53%. So basically what it says is, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the digital custom interaction adoption has basically accelerated by 4 years. So if it was not we would have taken 4 years to go there, whereas within a 6 months period of time, so they have looked at 2019 December to 2020 July, and within that short time span, we have reached there. In terms of the Sri Lankan context, it is still something new. So in terms of the custom interaction, something which we did was where we moved on to digital selling. Yes, it is a big shift because we had to undertake training for advisors, and even the training now has to be online. So we looked at different media, social media, WhatsApp, Viber, and as I said, we have already established a seamless onboarding, contactless process. So it was again a 360 turn, and also in such a scenario, in a virtual scenario, how do you build that confidence? How do you build that trust among the customers? And how do you stay relevant to customer values is completely important. Another trend that we are seeing is the power of data analytics. Using data analytics, how do you tend to offer a customized product proposition to the customers? How do you keep that engagement ongoing at different customer touch points? So we came up with an app called Click Life. So basically, using this app, the customer is able to do onboarding, to making payments, to make their claims. So we saw because of that, even there was a drop in terms of the call center inquiries and all that, because customer has those details in their fingertips. And in terms of being relevant to customer values, what we did was the app itself, we made it a health and fitness app, because health and fitness is something which there is a growing trend in terms of the customer lifestyle and behavior. Also, digital products, where insurance can be very complicated. But we came up with a product proposition called Click Life, a simple term insurance cover, and we wanted to make it affordable. We wanted to make it simple. So basically, at a daily premium of 23 rupees per day, you can completely buy that online. No paperwork, no hassle. In terms of making it available for a wider customer segment. So such innovation solutions are definitely needed. And how you basically respond to those customer solutions, the growing needs. Say, for an example, health was something that we saw. So we basically launched a new proposition called Health 360 recently. So whilst we also look at that customer front digital engagement, another important thing is digital engagement of the workforce. How do you keep that engaged? How do you make sure that their health and well-being is taken care of? And something which a lot of research came up is where, in terms of emotional intelligence and empathy, that is something which the employees were looking up to. So also in terms of not only customer value creation, but how do you basically develop that whole ecosystem, right? Because now, if you look at insurance, it was predominantly a agent-driven industry, but within the Asia Pacific region, what we are seeing is that dependency is coming down, and we are looking at alternative channels. Even bank insurance is something like that, where we distribute insurance products through our bank partners. So there are different new concepts like that. Even though those are new to Sri Lanka, if you look at Asia Pacific region, it's not new. And also, how do you develop partnerships? Do the customers have that ability to buy an insurance product like through from an e-commerce platform? So that whole partnership ecosystem is something important, which makes the product more relevant, more accessible, more simple, and also enhance that distribution channels. So I won't go into detail because I think we have already reached the scheduled time. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you for Ms. sharing your Vidyaku for sharing your views. So before moving into the Q&A sessions, it's time to sum up what we have discussed so far. So throughout the two sessions, as you have witnessed, first two academic staff members provided a kind of broad overview during the first session. Professor Kanji provided what we call social innovation process framework by also explaining the gradual shift from CSR, sustainability development goals, the VUCA environment, COVID-19, and the significance of multi-stakeholder engagement, the emergent social innovation process. So the most important part is all about his final slide, the social innovation, emergent social innovation process, where he actually talked about identifying opportunities to diffusing them as well. That's really, really important, even for a student and also even for a practitioner. And also in the subsequent discussion, you also argued, though it's not a paradigm shift, what is really, really important at this juncture is that the different stakeholders should come together and work together, though the word partnership is not new, but the way of interaction and interacting with each stakeholder is unique given the pandemic, and it's the best way to move forward. And in the case of Dr. Chamandiga, in the initial discussion, she outlined the significance of value co-creation from an SME perspective, and also outlined the 4 possible strategic choices. But in the next round of the discussion, what is really important is she highlighted the Sri Lankan context, where most of the SMEs focus on how to capture value rather than having a kind of long-term perspective of how to create value and then having an end game in the mind when you begin. So that's a problem in the Sri Lankan context. She explained or painted a picture that there needs to be a shift in the mindset as well. So both academics presented the theoretical perspective and also some practical insights based on their research they had undertaken in the past. Now, let me move on to the practitioner side. Mr. Viglapitiya actually provided a kind of comprehensive picture about his line of businesses and also the country's macroeconomic instability. So he extensively discussed about the problems, challenges, particularly as a country, even the business enterprises are facing challenges at two fronts. One is all about the pandemic, other one is all about the macroeconomic instability. So when it comes to the next stage, the second stage, he particularly coined the term that is all about using common approaches in an uncommon way. So what does it mean? It's very important because LPG distribution is a kind of essential service. So you distribute LPG distribution the cylinders, and on the way back you collect vegetables, fruits, and everything from farmers. As a result, you create a win-win situation for your enterprise and also for the farmers. So he used the term, you don't need to have innovative strategies in a sense, but you should be able to use some common approaches in uncommon way. That means other enterprises may not think in that direction as well. Next, moving on to the other presenter, other panelist, Mr. Darshana Veerakon, presented the picture of the tourism industry in our country in terms of its contribution and also the challenges. Particularly in the next round, he advocated for what we call the dark tourism. It's not an unethical one, rather trying to reach out to customers in a unique way. And also the final panelist, Ms. Vindhya Kure, during the first round of the discussion, elaborated about the different industries she has worked with, the kinds of interventions she along with the co-workers adopted. And particularly in the next round, she elaborated about the digital transformation, how business analytics has been used by her organization to exploit and also to serve customer unique needs. So this is what all about we have discussed so far. And what is really important to remember is such a vast concept it might be difficult for all of us to digest within just 2 hours each and everything. That's very obvious. However, what is really important is when we all go home, at least some of the concepts, if we can, what we call, try to have a kind of thought about it. And then if we explore it a bit further, it might be good for everyone as well. So with that note, we would like to go for Q&A session. I would like to request the audience to ask questions using Q&A box. So you can post your questions into the box. But what is really important is that if you could keep your question simple, and also if you could point out whom your question is directed at, then we can easily pass on to the particular question we can pass on to the panelist as well. So I kindly request you to keep your question simple, because then only we might be able to give more chances to people as well. So now it's time you can ask your questions. Okay, I would repeat again, instead of using the chat box, if you could drop your questions into Q&A box, would be great, because in the case of chat box, it would be very difficult to follow the questions. But anyhow, I would like to take 1 or 2 questions from there. But next time, it's always better if you could put your questions inside the Q&A box. So the first question is all about what would be the best strategy, diversify or value creation, how would it affect SMEs? I think I can pose that question to Dr. Chamandika. So I will repeat again. What would be the best strategy, diversify or value creation, I think for SMEs, and how would it affect SMEs?
Yeah, good question. Thanks for your question, Niluka. Yes, when it comes to, I think diversification is also a strategy, and value creation is actually, value creation means actually, value means benefits. So when you are diversifying, that is diversifying in the sense you are actually approaching into, let's say, for example, if you have one product line and you're focusing on product A group, tourism industry, for example, let's say, and you're focusing on tourism, and then you can focus on another industry. So that should be simply diversification, right? But value creation is when you are diversifying as, let's say, in basic, let me tell you this. In basic strategic management, we understand cost leadership, diversification, and differentiation as three different major strategies, right? Now, so these are the strategic approaches. Value creation is actually creating benefits. So when you, organizational point of view, your game plan is reflected through those three approaches, right? What do you call diversification, differentiation, and the cost leadership approach. But value creation is benefit creation. So when you are using these strategies or implementing, in which way you are creating value. So value creation is your approach basically. And so I don't see these two, we cannot really distinguish which one is better, because these are interconnected. So you have main organizational strategic direction that you are taking, and within that, how you are going to increase the benefit. So for SMEs, of course, yes, value create not only for SMEs, but also for every other organization. Fundamental thing is value creation. So value is benefit. So any organization has to develop a value proposition that really resonates with the customer requirement. So that is value creation. So diversification is the approach that you are using to create value from an organizational perspective. So it may be, for example, for the customer. So you are reaching the customer with different set of products to the on existing what is called the products that you are having. That could, or increasing the variety of the products. So you could have what is called the product lines in your business. So by having a diversified strategy, what you can, how does the benefit to the organization or SME is actually, you can reduce the risk because you're not putting all your eggs in one basket, right? So you focus on the emerging opportunities in one industry, for example. At the same time, you can divert to a strategy to another industrial sector so that you can reap the benefits and reap the opportunities, exploit the opportunities in that industry also, so that it actually give you an added advantage or a higher competitive advantage in the market to beat the competition. So that is the plus point that you can have for the SMEs. For the negative side of that is that if you are a startup, right, if you are a small organization, so it would really be difficult for you to diversify at the very beginning. So you really need to have a gradual approach to get into the diversification. I would say that if you could have a more lean approach, first to have a trial and error approach, or we call lean approach. So you'd rather investing everything in one particular option. You are experimenting, you are following an experimental approach. So that what you can do is that you can actually get the customer feedbacks and monitor the environmental dynamics and accordingly customize your strategy. So that can be done. So instead of directly pursuing a diversification strategy, I would say that it is better if you could move on with the kind of a temporary business model innovation strategy, which helps you to observe and then take the proactive approach and also reactive approaches to exploit the opportunity. So value creation is actually is within that strategy. So how, if you ask me how you create value, so there are various ways of creating value and thousands of ways. It's simply, if you can digest this, how are you going to increase the benefit? It may be through customer relationship. It may be through differently developing the distribution channels. Like instead of bricks and mortar store approaches, can you have a kind of an online presence? So that is also creative value. If you can reduce the cost, that will also be a benefit creation. If you can increase the number of product lines and offer a customized product or solution to the customer with a higher variety, that is also value creating. So like that way, so value creating approaches are, there are thousands of value creation approaches. So how does it impact to the SME? It is essential for you to really target the customers and have a more focused strategy to create value, because as SME, you really need to compete with the other established organizations. So not only for SMEs, but also for any organization, you need to craft your strategy enabling value creation or benefit creation. So I don't see that we cannot really say diversification is better than value creation. No, because they are integrated. So within the diversification, your specific, when you deliver the specific solution, you really need to create value there. So that is your specific strategy, and diversification is your overall large organizational strategic approach, I would say.
Thank you, Dr. Chamandika, for a detailed response. Now, the next question is to Mr. Vagapitiya. So the question is, how can the businesses scale the stakeholder involvement during COVID-19?
Can you repeat the question?
Okay. The question is, how can the businesses scale the stakeholder involvement during COVID?
Well, of course, let me explain our experience, how we did it. Even though I'm not too sure whether it is theoretically, explainable, but how we did practically. The first thing is when you say the stakeholders, the internal stakeholders and external stakeholders, first and foremost, we had to get together as all the management teams, all employees, to assess the current situation and assessing the impacts to the existing businesses and how to plan to mitigate the damages. So that we did with our board of directors, managers, and all the employees together, assess the kind of a crisis management plan. How do we ensure the continuity of our businesses, whether it is retail, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is any other businesses, energy, we wanted to ensure the continuity of the businesses. That's number one. Then, so we had a crisis plan. We planned, we had a regular, actually our the meetings were very effective. Even though we were not physically meeting, we had used Teams and Zooms and other technological platforms to interact. Sometimes we have 2 hour, 3 hour different meetings, and gave the responsibility to certain sub-teams we created for them to assess the current issue, impact of that to our top line, the bottom line, and also preparing a short-term, the strategic plan to ensure, number one, the continuity of business, number one. Secondly, most crucially, to ensure safety, the health and other conditions of each and every employee and their closest family members. In the first round of COVID, we had to reserve some of our facilities to ensure, the immediate family member safety when they get infected this COVID virus. We arrange a hospital and other things. Then thirdly, to ensure other essential needs of those our employees and their family. That's to ensure that we look after our employees. Then we had huge inventories of raw materials and other products in hand. For example, in supermarket, we had to suddenly close down, but we had perishables, huge inventories. So that is the interaction of external stakeholders. We interacted with our suppliers, the other service provider, and then safely remove some of our inventories. Because in the retail sector, you cannot keep some of those inventories. Then there were other stakeholders, especially on the request of state and other health authorities. We had to act as essential services, providing certain essential commodities to armed forces, the health sector, and then providing fuel for their transports, and some of our products and services to essential products and services to ensure electricity generation, petroleum production, then the gas, and importing of continually importing of gas and other petroleum products, lubricants, etc. So we had to create a kind of a strategic or tactical plan in order to ensure business continuity, because our products and services were essentials, and then ensuring a safety of our employees. Thirdly, to ensure that our customers are getting their product and services during that time. So different stakeholders were connected, and then different plans were prepared, and we monitored regularly on daily basis, weekly basis, the effectiveness of that. Now, that is how we ensured that our customers are happy, our employees are happy, and the other stakeholders who are connected. Now, whilst doing that, that was our urgent and prime objective. Then it was affected to our revenue, because LAFS is a cash-rich company. Every day we have over 250 million cash collection from our supermarket, fuel stations, emission centers, you name all that. Now suddenly our cash flow, had an impact. So we had to plan the financial plan of that after the pandemic, how to be. So we were not aware. In the beginning, we were not sure when this is going to end. We thought it might be 1 month, 2 months, like that. Then we had to look at from an institutional perspective, because as public quoted companies, there are certain compliance requirements. The certain standards are, and those things are available. So we had to ensure those commitments are there. For example, audits, and how do we make certain impairments. So that was it. On the other hand, logistic providers, because we had to import raw materials, our production facilities had to continue. So it's a complex kind of a thing, so we managed it. So it's a kind of a stakeholder combination we made, and we got a lot of committed support and involvement, participatory kind of a thing from all the stakeholders. That was how we did. Actually, that's how all the companies did in general.
Thank you, Mr. Bagapitiya. Now I think I might take one more question, given the time constraints. if possible, I might go for two. The question is all about what is the role of state institutions in creating value during crisis in the context of SMEs? Though it's not explicitly mentioned, I think the question is directed at Dr. Chamandika. So again, I will repeat the question. What's the role of state institutions in creating value during crisis in the context of SMEs?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, I think from Dr. Maheshwaran. Thank you very much for that question. Yes, this is addressing to a broader aspect of the ecosystem. So when you take the institutional environment, as I mentioned earlier, one party cannot do, one cannot find the cure for all these bigger issues. So what is our role? Let's look at this in this way. When you take the SMEs, what we understand is that SMEs are especially lacking marketing support, and especially because of being small and also new to the market, and especially if it is a startup, and then they find it very difficult to find the customers, especially during what do we call a crisis situation. And also if there is a lack of understanding about the marketing aspects, and also if there is lack of knowledge about strategizing the business approach to be taken during a crisis, so then there are interventions to be made. So what is our role here? So if you take, for example, in Sri Lanka, we know that from government and public sector roles, if you look into that side, industrial development bodies there, and then in the provincial councils, we see that there is a SME development sector is there. And also if you take the district secretariat and divisional secretariat, so there are various other different arrangements to link the SMEs and drive the SMEs. So there are various mechanisms developed and the processes established. So during a crisis, especially these different institutions need to come into together to address the issues faced by the SME. So what are they? So especially when it comes to finding the customers, right? And also to develop their strategic plan. Say financing is a problem, especially during a crisis. So they cannot go to a bank and say, right, okay, I have lost this much and I don't have customers, please pay me something, give me a loan. It doesn't help them. So what the bankers are doing is, and because they are also engaging in a business and they are hesitating to provide the support in a crisis, especially for the SMEs, because it is dangerous for them as well as risky for them. So what they expect from the SME is actually to present a clear strategic plan for them to say that, okay, I have lost this much and this is my game plan. This is how I am going to recover. So we need to now question, does our SME sector has that capacity? Do our entrepreneurs, SME entrepreneurs, have this capacity? We have seen from this research that there is a lot of gaps in the understandings, preparing not the business plans, but kind of a strategic plans for the organization and preparing marketing plans. So there is a knowledge gap. So very recently, IFC, International Finance Corporation, has done a research in Sri Lankan SME sector, and they have found that nearly 25% of the SMEs have the capacity of digitalizing and even to understand what is digitalization. So what it shows is that there is a knowledge gap. So if that is the case, so this Industrial Development Board and all these other government or the public sector oriented organization can update their knowledge creation approaches, because we've seen that industrial development, they have different manuals provided to SMEs. So there are various training programs that they are conducting. So it is a time for them now to revise them and support. So one of the things is actually to support them through the knowledge mechanism. So that is one thing that they can do. On the other hand, they need financing support. So one is through knowledge and through training programs, so they can help them to develop their strategic plan. On the other hand, then we need finance. So governments and other related organizations could actually get the support from the banking industries and other financial institutions to support the social SMEs by what do you call creating a trust and building and showing the support to enterprises. So that should also be done through the government mechanism. Government has to intervene in that to support the SMEs through financial institutions. And on the other hand, if you take university sector, education sector, so to support the knowledge gap again, you can actually, through research, you can help the social business enterprises to understand in the situation and how what sort of strategies that they could adopt in order to move forward with the crisis. So those are some of the things that we need to focus on, especially during a crisis, and not only for crisis actually, but also for normal course of action. If we really need to build that needed ecosystem, such kind of an integrated plan has to be developed. On the other hand, other supportive organizations, supportive service providing organizations can come into play and work with SMEs by providing them other needed, what do we call, support, especially for digitalization, as Vindhya mentioned, especially very much about this. Digitalization is a possible strategy. IFC has also found that people are interested in adopting strategy, adopting digitalization approach, but they have a lack of understanding and lack of infrastructure to get to that point. So if that is the case, probably the organizations in the digital sphere can come and support and or look for alternative arrangements and or collaborative arrangements with the SME sector to develop kind of a common platforms, online platforms possibly, so that they can actually reach to the customers, and then they can use other digital marketing approaches to drive their innovations further. So such kind of arrangements have to be developed within the overall institutional sector of an economy, and then we can actually help the SME sector of the country to move forward. So that is how I look at this problem, not only for the crisis situation, but even for the general situation.
Thank you, Dr. Chamandika. I would like to apologize to others who have raised questions because due to the time constraints, we are unable to take up your questions. So we would like to apologize. Now, since we have reached the concluding part of this session, I would like to thank all the panelists for sharing their thoughts and views, and also the most importantly, by sacrificing their valuable time today and spending the valuable portion of their time for the benefit of the audience and also the wider stakeholders. So again, I would like to thank first Professor Kanji, and also Dr. Chamandika, and also Mr. Peradeniya, and also Mr. Darshana Veerakonda, and also Ms. Vindhya Kure. So without their support, it would be a difficult task for me to bring this session lively. So I would like to thank all of them again. Now I think I would like to pass on to for the next event that's presenting the tokens of appreciation.
Sir, thank you very much. With that, ladies and gentlemen, from everything that we have heard, the crisis would create more synergistic benefits, and the future of the corporate world would hopefully be bright and positive, provided that we put in place the changes effectively together with a proper tone at the top. So to officially brings the business forum off to a closure, I would like to very respectfully invite Ms. Madhushani Gunathilaka, Chairperson, Business Forum Committee.
Thank you, Ms. Yasaransi. Greetings and best wishes from the Faculty of Management. It gives me immense pleasure to thank each and everyone for their valuable services in making the iPUMSE 2021 Business Forum a profound success. On behalf of the Faculty of Management, I would like to offer my most sincere gratitude to Senior Professor Sampath Amaratunga, Chairman, University Grant Commission of Sri Lanka, Professor M.D. Lamavansa, Vice Chancellor, University of Peradeniya, Professor W.M.T. Madhujit, Deputy Vice Chancellor, University of Peradeniya, Professor Atul Ekanayaka, Dean Faculty of Management, and Professor Ravi Kurupuge, Chairperson, iPUMSE 2021. Then I would like to convey my heartfelt gratitude to the distinguished experts who joined hands with us today to make this business forum a success. So our profound gratitude goes to Professor Kanjikanimoto, Waseda University, Japan, Dr. Tamithika Veerakone, Swinburne University of Technology, Australia, Mr. W.H.K. Vagapitiya, Chairman, Loves Holding Limited, Mr. Darshana Veerakone, Director, Universal Lifeline, Ceylon Private Limited, Ms. Vindhya Kure, Chief Bank Assurance Officer, Union Assurance PLC, and Mr. N Aguilar, Senior Lecturer, Department of Human Resource Management, Faculty of Management, University of Peradeniya. Next, I would like to offer my sincere gratitude to the academic and non-academic staff members of the Faculty of Management for their extended cooperation in organizing the iPUMSE 2021 Business Forum. Finally, the audience representing the academics, industry experts, and the students, thank you for being with us today and for providing the much required liveness to this virtual platform. So, this marks the successful end of the iPUMSE 2021 Business Forum. Now, I would like to hand over the session to Ms. Madhavi to connect with the closing ceremony of the iPUMSE 2021. Over to you, Ms. Madhavi.
Thank you, Ms. Madhushani. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the closing ceremony of Peradeniya University International Management Research Sessions 2021, iPUMSE 2021, Faculty of Management, University of Peradeniya, Sri Lanka. Everybody needs achievement, yet it takes after individuals who make a genuine way to get it. Now, it is time to celebrate the victories of such dedicated researchers. Academics, policymakers, professionals, graduates, and students of universities from Sri Lanka, as well as from other parts of the world, presented their research findings in the conference virtually under 4 tracks, namely HR transformation and organizational agility, operations excellence and digitalization, sustainable finance and governance, and value-added marketing and innovation. Now, I would like to cordially invite Professor Atul Ekanayaka, Dean, Faculty of Management, University of Peradeniya, to give away the Best Presenter Awards for each track. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Madhavi. I think I'm audible to you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, as all of us are pretty much aware now, we have conducted this conference under 4 tracks, and the organizing committee has selected best paper presenter under each of the tracks. So let me now announce the best paper presenter under track 1, HR transformation and organizational agility. The best paper presenter awards goes to the paper titled Nature of Bullying in the Maldives Tourist Resorts, Work-Related, Personal or Violent. The presenter, A. Lisa. Congratulations, Lisa. And now let's move to track 2. Track 2 is Operations Excellence and Digitalization. The best paper presenter under this track is the paper title Garbage and Culture, Why What Works in Japan Does Not Work in Sri Lanka. The presenter, T.K. Seelagam. Congratulations. Now let's move to track 3. Track 3 is Sustainable Finance and Governance. The best paper presenter, the title of the presentation is The Impact of Working Capital Management on Profitability, a study on banks and finance companies listed on the Colombo Stock Exchange. The presenter is VP Edirisinghe. Congratulations. And finally, track 4, Value-Added Marketing and Innovation. The best paper presenter under this track, the presentation title, Impact of Green Marketing Orientation on the Green Value Creation Towards Efficient Business Performance of SMEs. Case study from SMEs operated in Negombo. The presenter is R. Sivashankar. Congratulations. So I wish to thank all the presenters and particularly these best paper presenters. And as you all know, we have undergo a thorough scrutinization procedure and unbiased evaluation without involvement of any of the organizing committee. I think we have got the best list with us. And once again, congratulations, the award winners. And over to you, Madhavi. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our heartiest congratulations to all of the awardees. Now, I would like to cordially invite Professor R.H.K. Gay, Chairperson, to deliver the closing remarks for iPUMSE 2021.
Thank you, Madhavi. Good evening to you all. I think I'm not going to take that much of time from you all, since we are even running the program out of time. But I would like to remind few things at this moment. So today in Sri Lankan time at around 8:30 we started this conference, and then we had the inaugural session. So after the inaugural session we had the sessions, I mean the paper presentations, and thereafter we straight away went for the business forum, and finally we have come to the closing ceremony. So at this moment I think rather than making the thanking speech, I would like to make a few comments, and then I will thank all the people who really worked in order to make this event a success. So first of all, I would like to say that even though sometimes we appear in front of this screen, but there are numerous various people who worked really hard in order to bring this conference up to this level. In this case, when it comes to university administration, particularly the chairman, University Exam Commission, Vice Chancellor of University of Peradeniya, Deputy Vice Chancellor, and all other administrative staff of the university, numerous ways they actually helped us to conduct this conference in this time. The main objective of this conference to share the knowledge among communities, actually international as well as local participants, as international and local presenters, international papers and local papers. We got together and finally we could share the knowledge among these scholars. So at this moment, from the beginning, I would like to highlight the guidance, encouragement, and all the support given by the Dean of the Faculty of Management. So without his actually encouragement, without his support and guidelines, instructions, as the organizing committee, probably we would not be able to conduct the conference in this way. And in the same time, heads of departments of Faculty of Management, their contribution is also really appreciated. In addition to that, all the resource persons in the business forum, panelists, plus the moderator, actually they also did a very good job. Even from the beginning, I could listen to the business forum and it was really inspiring and we learned a lot. And in addition to that, all the chairpersons, discussants, session coordinators, as well as reviewers, they also did their job really well, and finally we could conduct the sessions really well at that point. In addition to that, I would like to highlight the service given by the organizing committee of Faculty of Management, University of Peradeniya. I am also one of the members, but they are tireless commitment as well as their dedication. So really, really valued, as well as they did a very good job in order to conduct this session this way. The assistant registrar of the faculty and the assistant bursar of the Faculty of Management, University of Peradeniya. In addition to that, all the non-academic members of the faculty and the sponsors, and as well as other people who are joining, who helped us in numerous ways from the outside, should be really appreciated. With all these guidelines, with all these assistance, help, and all these directions, we could conduct this conference. At this moment, I would like to finally thank all the people who helped us in numerous ways to conduct this conference in this way. I hope that you all enjoyed the day from the beginning to end, and you could get many things from the conference. Thinking that, I would like to officially close the iPUMSE 2021 officially. Thank you so much again to you all. I would like to hand over the session to Madhavi. Madhavi, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, we have concluded a remarkable, insightful, and a memorable conference. On behalf of the Faculty of Management, University of Peradeniya, I would like to convey my sincere thanks to all the dignitaries and participants for being with us throughout the conference. With that, we are concluding the Peradeniya University International Management Research Sessions 2021, Faculty of Management, University of Peradeniya, Sri Lanka. Hope to see you all in the 2023 iPUMSE as well. Stay safe and goodbye until we meet again. Now, it is the time for the national anthem, and you may leave the meeting after that. Thank you and have a good rest of the day.
Hey. මේ හරිනේ your stream will not හරි හරි එයා මොනවද කරනව නේද? ඔකට ඇහෙනවද දන්නේ?
Bisa geram kala.
Sir, question එක අහලා කොහෙද හරි
අද
කමෙන්ට් එක කියන්නේ ගන්න සර් මොනවද කියන්නේ
මට තේරෙන්නේ
සර් කමෙන්ට්ස් කියලා නේද දැම්මේ සර් question වලදී නෙවෙයි යන්නේ ආන්සර් විදිහට
ඕ මට මොකක්ද කියනවා මට තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ
මම මොකද සර් අතෙන් නිකන්
මට තේරෙනවා මොකක්ද අවුලක් වුණා කියලා මට තේරෙනවා මොකක්ද අවුලක් වුණා කියලා අභියත යදට කියන්න ගත්තා මේ අරකින් යවන්න කියලා මට තේරෙනවා මොනවද අවුලක් කියලා
පැනලිස්ට් වලට පුළුවන් උත්තර දෙන්න දාන්න
පස්සේ හැබැයි සර්විස් ෆෝර්ස් උනානේ.
ඔව් ඒසකට උත්තර දුන්නා. කවුද මතක නැහැ උදුන්නේ.
මම පස්සේ දාලා තව වැඩ වලට ගියා.
ඔව්. යාර ස්ටේක් හෝල්ඩර්ස් ආයක පැය භාගයක් විතර කිව්වද කොහොමද? මේ මේක
ඉවරද වැඩි?
ඔව් no longer be n කියන n කරන්නේ.